and or what we also would call a State of the Union. It will be his first in this second term. But we know there's a great deal of misinformation and disinformation that's taking place, and it will be coming from him. We're going to pre-sponsor and then response after. Stateofthepeople.media is live and on the air. Share this link wherever you're watching it, on whatever channel. Share it with your loved ones, family, and friends. And I have the privilege of opening us and throwing it to two dynamic warrior queens, one of whom just a week ago we rallied in support of her. We welcome to stateofthepeople.media to kick us off our dear warrior queen, Joy Ann Reed, and alongside her, the host of Native Land Podcast, who really came up with the idea that we would do this in 24 hours, and then we organized it in 48. So bless her heart for challenging us, and somehow we made it happen. That's Angela Rye. So welcome to get us started on stateofthepeople.media, Joy Ann Reed and Angela Rye. Hey, sisters.
Thank you, Reverend Mark.
Yeah.
I don't
Hey,
hear Joy.
Can we hear Joy?
I don't hear her.
She's on.
I don't hear her. Well, while we wait to address Joy's audio, I just want to tell everyone how much I love Black people. It is so important for us to understand this moment and what is being required of us, and that is to lean in and work together. Yes, Joy Reid is no longer on MSNBC, but today she's here with our folks because this is where she always is. She has the heart of the people. And Joy, I hope that your audio comes in soon. You cut me off whenever it comes on, but I want to just make sure that folks know why we did this. Tomorrow, well, now, today, later on tonight, Donald Trump will address the country in what is called a joint address of Congress. Normally, we call it State of the Union, regardless of if it's his first address or not. But he will, at 9 p.m. Eastern, address the country. And we thought it was imperative to provide people an alternative space to ensure that they could hear the truth. We are in the state of emergency. I've been saying all day that Congresswoman Winmore took the House floor a couple of weeks ago to say the House is on fire. And the truth of it is that the country is on fire. And so we've rallied together to come together for 24 hours, a marathon that will be streamed on multiple sites, including stateofthepeople.media, where you will hear from some of the most critical voices of our time, from the NAACP president, Derek Johnson, to the NAACP LDF lead, Janai Nelson. You will hear from Kimberly Crenshaw. You'll hear from Mark Morial. You will hear from Hakeem Jeffries, Yvette Clark, Joy Ann Reed, Brittany Packnett Cunningham, Dr. David Johns, and so many more. It is imperative that we turn our hearts toward one another and we stand up and gird ourselves for this very significant fight. It begins with the foundation of truth, and that is what we seek to bring to you for the next 24 hours. Joy, please tell me your audio is working.
I think it is. It's working. It's working. Look, technology decided to be kind. Well, thank you, Chief of Staff to Black America, Angela Rye. It's always an honor to be with you because when I tell you that this sister loves our people and I love our people. Look, Black people we are the most resilient people in this country. We believe in this thing called democracy with a belief that is not really founded in our experience. But I think what's really important for y'all to think about as you are going into approaching tomorrow, number one, why does it matter, right? You know, the idea that we're in a crisis of democracy, I think is clear. But the question for our community is, what does that actually mean in your actual life? And what that means is not just that you're seeing this really insane reality show being put on by the White House and by the owner of Tesla and Twitter. And it is a reality show. It's literally cast like a reality show. It's cast for TV. Former reality show person is running the Federal Aviation Administration. A former Fox Weekend host. I'm not against TV. I was on cable. A Fox Weekend host is running the Defense Department. Dr. Oz is in charge of health along with RFK Jr., whose only qualification is that he comes from a rich and famous family. It's all reality TV, but that is designed to make you look away and think it's just a show that doesn't matter to you. One of the things we're going to do in this next 24 hours is explain how a crisis in democracy actually affects the hood, how it affects you. Right now, we are not sure whether your grandma is going to get her Social Security check. That's real. If you have student loans, it's not clear that that check is going to clear, even if you've already done your FAFSA. If you don't have your FAFSA yet and haven't applied for student loans, they may not be available. There's already an effort to shut down the Department of Education. What does that mean for you? It means if you have a special needs child, they may not be able to get the federally funded help that they got last year. You're talking about losing potentially millions of civil servants who you may not think that matters to you, but if you start cutting people at the VA, that means your uncle who's a Vietnam veteran may not be able to get health care at all, or they may privatize the health care and make it more expensive. You're about to see tariffs that might kick in as early as tomorrow, which will make literally everything that is imported from China, meaning everything in Walmart, cost more. Everything imported from Canada and Mexico cost more. Cars are going to cost more. Food is going to cost more. Your pocketbooks are going to pay for this reality show. So it's really important that you all forget all of the rhetoric you hear on TV. Forget the rhetoric. This is about you. This is about what happens to you in your life. It's not just about politics.
That is the gospel truth, Joy Reid. The only way that she knows how to bring it is real and honest. And so we thank God for you, Joy. I have to tell you, the thing that I'm most excited about is how quickly this came together. I don't know if she'll do this because I know she's in the middle of doing some work, but I want to just shout out Holly Holiday, who is God's angel. Mark, you all saw initially. Mark has been working wall to wall on this too. Holly Holiday is a godsend on Win with Black Women for those of you who join those calls every week. And also she's been a godsend to us. She's a tech genius. Elon, you better watch out because she also got integrity. She coming for you and she ain't gonna doge us. So I just want to shout out Holly Holiday as well. And I just have to say, I think that I am so humbled, Joy, by the fact that Black people knew what time it was. Mm-hmm. And we always do, but there was something unique about this moment where it was like, you know what? There's something being required of me that is different. Truth needs to be told and action needs to be taken. Communities need to be protected and we need to honor the ancestors and we need to protect what is to come for future generations. If we don't come together right now, we don't know how we'll come together. So I'm so grateful for that. And I just wanted to shout that out too.
No, absolutely. And State of the People, you all behind the scenes, if you could understand how many different disparate Black voices have come together for this, it is actually amazing. And in a short period of time, we're talking about not just people who come from cable TV backgrounds like Angie and myself. We're not just talking about people who have hit podcasts like Angela does with Native Land Pod. We're not just talking about people who come from radio like Mark Thompson. We're talking about people who are TikTok stars, people who you're watching on social media, people who are on Instagram, where people are getting a lot more of their news and information, people who've developed social media followings in the millions, but who would never normally interact with people who are doing cable. These are not your typical guests you're seeing on TV, but then again, some of them are. People like Elie Mystal, who writes for The Nation. We're talking about people who come from every corner of Black American media and social influence, came together quick, fast, in a hurry because we care this much about what happens to you and what happens to our communities. What's really incredible about this is these are people, some of whom don't even really know each other personally, have not ever met each other, would not necessarily be in the same social circles. But look, we decided, we understood the assignment. The assignment is you. The assignment is to make sure that you truly understand what's happening in Washington and how it impacts your communities. That's what we're about. It's about community. And when I tell you this community came together fast, Angela's not kidding. People came together in like 48 hours. Literally, what have we been doing this, Angie, for like, what, a week? Like, it hasn't even been that long.
We started planning this on Friday. Like, it's not a lie. And everybody was like, okay, well, what are we doing? Like, let's go.
Let's go.
I think, Joy, too, Well, I'll say that for when you're not on. But I think that it's important for us to protect, honor, and respect Black voices. And we're living in a time where Black federal workers really of all colors, but Black federal workers, people that were told to get that good government job because one day they would be able to retire with a good pension. We're talking about Black students who are, utilizing grants for research the research grants have been frozen. We're talking about folks in communities that don't know how they're going to make ends meet. And they were told during an election cycle that eggs were going to be more affordable.
Listen.
And so when we think about everything that's going on, Black people are like, enough is enough for the 18th time, and I think that's the part we gotta figure that out. And so we literally have put together, I keep referencing the 1992 Dream Team from the Olympics, the dream team of Black commentators and organizers and activists and thinkers and organizational heads and members of Congress and elected officials, attorneys general, are coming to talk to you about what you really need to know.
Yeah.
So it's the state of the people. And we didn't say Black people on purpose because we know we're going to be taken care of in this, but it's actually all of us. It's the whole of us because we all matter. And we need to concentrate on how we preserve our own lives in an administration that's starting to look a lot like fascism.
Well, and the thing about it is, Angela, we know the 92%. We know how we voted, right? 92% for Kamala Harris. And we know that Black men were 80-20 for the Democratic candidate for president. But look, the results of the election still impact us. So that little graphic of Black women sitting on the wall, sipping, cocktails while the nation burns, that would be nice if we could set ourselves aside and just watch the chaos that was unleashed, not by our own doing. But unfortunately, that fire is going to burn us too. And so all these things that are happening, despite the way that we voted and the way that we unified as a community to try to elect the first Black woman president, we're still going to suffer the consequences. And you all know that when America catches a cold, Black America catches pneumonia. And so no matter what happens and all of the federal workers that you see out there protesting, those protests may not be us right now, but the impact that they're protesting about will be us tomorrow. And unfortunately, it will be us worse. When home prices start to collapse, ours will collapse more. When rent prices shoot up, which they will, ours will shoot up more. If they take away Social Security, our elders and seniors have fewer resources to be able to survive economically. They're going to suffer more. If Obamacare goes away, guess what? We're going to suffer more because Obamacare actually disproportionately benefited Black people. So we're on the line, y'all, regardless of whether, listen, hopefully you've rested after the election. You're supposed to rest. We deserve to rest. But right now, it's time to stand up because this is not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. And what you're going to hear tomorrow night in that State of the Union is probably just going to be a show because we know that the person who occupies the White House loves to put on a show. But it's not the show that's the problem. It's the actions that are being taken, particularly. And I'm glad we have members of Congress that are going to be weighing in because right now, Congress is AWOL. Congress has no power. The power of Congress that you elected is being taken by a private citizen because of his wealth and his influence. That ain't what anybody voted for.
And by that, she's talking about unpresident Elon Musk. But on that, we have a brilliant scholar among us, one of our good sister friends. She's an activist and the host of Undistracted, a podcast that y'all definitely need to check out. Our good sister, Brittany Packnett Cunningham, who decided to stay up late with us because she already up with them babies.
With the
I'm
babies.
already up, child. I'm up being a milkmaid. So I said, let me just move one over and bring the laptop in. I'm so thrilled to be with you, sisters. I mean, listen, you all have done a yeoman's job of putting not only this marathon together, because as you've been saying, Angela, it is a marathon and not a sprint, right? So this 24-hour conversation, this counter programming is a reminder that, but also of simply making sure that we are holding up the light of truth always, Joy. We are, I'm always grateful to be with you all, Joy. I know you went through a breakup recently, but what we know is that the people ain't never breaking up, okay? We're always in this together. And whenever you're raising the light of truth, like I'm always glad to be a part. So we don't have to pay attention to that show tomorrow. Like you said, it is for pure entertainment value, people have to remember how much arts and culture and the attempt of winning the national sentiment is a part of the fabric of fascism. That's why you take over a Kennedy Center board. That's why you delay a check to sign your name to it. That's why you try to get your face on $100 bill. That's why you actually try to show up in such a way that makes people feel like they have allegiance to you personally, so that they will commit their loyalty and their fealty to you, right? And that's not what we're about. So we turning the TV off. We turning up the revolution, and that's why I'm glad to be a part of this conversation.
Can I ask you, Brittany, because you were so involved in the Ferguson movement, and one of the things that we've seen that's really been alarming is the way that the Department of Justice has essentially withdrawn from the business of protecting civil rights. They've made it clear that the only interest that this DOJ has in civil rights is in addressing the anger of any white citizen who may not get something that they wanted, a job they wanted, a placement in school, but that they are essentially withdrawing all of those consent decrees that people like you worked so hard to put in place, that Kristen Clark was putting in place to get police departments who've been harming Black people to at least change their practices. I know the Maryland Police Department was under a consent decree because of their hiring practices that were discriminatory against Black men and women in particular. That's gone. And so essentially it's people are now free to do whatever when it comes to policing, free to hire in discriminatory ways. Talk about what the pragmatic impact of that is going to be.
It's going to be massive, Joy. One of the things people often miss is that while we're looking for some kind of federalized or centralized law or statute to fix all of policing in the country, there are over 18,000 police departments in the entire country, which means that it's not possible for us to have one law that fixes everything. We actually cannot boil the ocean here. We have to take it step by step, piece by piece. And that's what the work with the DOJ was doing. That's why it was so important. Back in 2014, it was people like Vanita Gupta. Then, as you said, it was our good sister, Kristen Clark, who were making sure to continue that work. And it looked like doing a lot of the unsexy things, right? So one of the things that we pursued heavily in 2014 and 2015 that we won and that Trump 1.0 immediately overturned was stopping DOJ from and getting the DOJ to commit to no longer putting decommissioned military equipment in the hands of local police departments. So when people were turning on your show and other shows on television and watching the news and seeing armored vehicles on residential streets, seeing, mounted rifles being pointed at elders and at children and at clergy on the streets of Ferguson, and then later Baltimore and Cleveland and New York and so many other places, that was because the U.S. government was allowing that military equipment to, once it was done overseas, to come here and engage in war with the citizens at home. So working with the DOJ stopped that in 2015, and Trump 1.0 came back and reinstated that right away. Those consent decrees that you're talking about, when we find and can prove that a police department is treacherous and torturous to its very citizens, then those consent decrees are absolutely necessary, because the consent decrees say you cannot receive funding and additional support from your federal government until you correct these things. And all of those 18,000 police departments rely on some kind of funding and support from the federal government. So they're saying we're cutting off the flow until you stop disproportionately killing people, until you stop arresting people in order to make your salaries off of those fines and fees, until you actually bring some of those things to order. We're also thinking, when we talk about the DOJ, about what happens after incarceration, right? So a lot of the lawsuits that Kristen Clark's DOJ brought and her civil rights division brought were when people were dying in jail, right? So when we look at the story of our dear sister Sandra Bland, we needed people like Kristen Clark in the DOJ to come in and say, this jail, this county jail, or this state prison has a pattern and practice of actually harming people once they get inside of your doors. So they're not engaging in rehabilitation or care. People are dealing with inhumane living conditions. They're dealing with death. They're dealing with trauma and terror that should not be a part of their experience. All of those things are now completely gone. There's no funding for it. There's no staff for it. There's no interest in it, because this is a government, this is an administration that is interested in continuing those very things and making sure that we are being put in our place. And they're going to use this DOJ to make sure that that happens. So not only have we lost the good things, we're going to be dealing with a whole lot of bad things, and a DOJ that's going to be used not only to help white people achieve even more, but a DOJ that's going to be essentially vindictive, right? And is going to be the vindictive arm of a vindictive president.
Wow.
Well, I just have to say, one, Britt, I'm so glad that the babies have you up late.
I mean, I'm glad you all are up late.
But I want to tell y'all, as fellow church girls, this is something that's been on my spirit literally since we decided to do this from midnight to midnight. Earlier this year, actually the day before inauguration, I had a speech and I was trying to think about something different I could say to honor Dr. King. And I looked at one of his speeches that dealt with midnight. Right. And so I thought about this because biblically, when we talk about this, I don't mean to take y'all to church, but just bear with me for a minute.
I got the hymnals behind me. We can go.
You like we can go. So biblically speaking, they say that the darkest hour is at midnight. But the other thing that we know is in the Black church tradition, we have something right before New Year's called watch night. And so the thing that occurred to me was, even if it is at the darkest hour, it is our spiritual tradition, our practice in it, our inheritance, our legacy, and our responsibility to watch over what is happening. For those who came before us, our present and the future, we have an urgent responsibility to watch what's happening. And not only to watch and pray and act. And so what I'm so grateful for about this convening is on the other side, we have 21 hours of pre-programming before we even get to State of the Union. We have 21 hours of a pre-buttal. We have 21 hours to lay out for folks what has happened in this administration, from the courtroom to the executive branch, where he is way far beyond his authority, and even encroaching into the legislative branch that ain't doing nothing because the Republicans want to give him a rubber stamp. And I will tell y'all, there will be plenty of people involved in this programming that are not partisan, but just want y'all to know facts. And so the thing that is really, really important in this moment is to understand that once we get through that 21 hours, the last 3 hours are where do we go from here? Also, in an homage to Dr. King. So it will be a Black summit where you will hear from Black leaders from 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow to midnight, where we talk about our next steps. Because yes, we can talk. We definitely can talk, right, girls? We can talk, but we also can act. We feel a responsibility to act. So that's the thing that it was sat with me. Like, okay, well, we could do shut-ins, we could do watch night, and we also know that it might be dark, but we know at some point the day has to break.
That's right. Joy, I'm curious from you, when you bring up this idea of watch night, Angela, I'm thinking about the history of it, right? And knowing that it was New Year's Eve, 1862, when our formerly enslaved ancestors decided to watch, not only watch night, and to see, but they decided to stay up to see what was coming, right? So they're watching through the night because they know emancipation lies on the other side of dawn, right? They know liberation lies on the other side of dawn. And they were clear that this was not an emancipation or a liberation that Abraham Lincoln awarded us somehow, right? This was not some kind of gift. Our ancestors earned this, right? Their blood, their tears, their creativity, their sacrifice is on that piece of paper. And so they stayed up to watch enslavement turn to freedom, right? They stayed up to watch bondage turn into liberation. And so when you bring this watch night idea into this conversation, I'm so moved, and I'm curious, Joy, as you think about making sure that we keep watch until we get free. You know, you are yet another example of how that has to exist outside of any kind of traditional or corporate bounds or bonds that people want to keep us in. So how are you thinking about making sure that we are keeping watch, right? How are you thinking about keeping that light on until the dawn comes, no matter what the challenges are?
It's a great question, and I'm so glad, Brittany, that you brought up the fact that this was not a gift from Abraham Lincoln. You know, I think we teach our children poorly in our schools in some ways, and I know you're a former public school teacher. Is that we gloss over sometimes the work that the enslaved did to liberate themselves. Our school books are not written to explore that, but the reality is, you know, Decoration Day was a celebration of themselves, right? Black people, more than 100,000, fought in the Civil War and turned the tide of the war. And never forget that Lincoln's Union forces were losing the Civil War, and they couldn't have won the Civil War until they added Black troops. They added them in desperation because they had presented themselves from the beginning saying, arm us, we will go and we will fight these former slave owners. And at first, Lincoln said, yeah, no, thank you. We don't want to arm Black people who probably deeply hate the people who had enslaved them. And we don't want to put arms in their hands. But they ended up taking up arms, and that is what turned the tide of the war. So we liberated ourselves and then went on to celebrate ourselves, Memorial Day, creating that. But then in Texas had to fight for 3 more years to get liberation that had come to those who were, you know, east of the Mississippi. So the reality is that we've had to continually fight for our liberation. It's never been fixed. And so we thought there was some fixed date when we suddenly were liberated, and it's just a traveling date. You know, we've only really had anything like a multiracial democracy for maybe 60 years, because when you pass the 1877 Civil Rights Act, that has to then be firmed up by the 1965 Voting Rights Act, the 1964 Civil Rights Act. They essentially ignored the 14th and 13th Amendments and literally for another 100 years. So we know that this is a continual struggle. And so for me, I think about those enslaved people. Well, where were they getting their information? There was no MSNBC. There was no CNN. There was no internet. There was no Twitter. There was no Instagram. There was no TikTok. How were they communicating with each other in order to create this liberation force that was much more powerful than what we have to deal with now with all our technology, right? So I think about the ways that we have to get simple about how we communicate. We need to think about communicating in community. I know we used to hear a lot of our stuff right in church. We church girls, you know, we used to hear a lot. It's not partisan politics, but voting politics, why you needed to vote, what you needed to do, what you needed to know about what your government was doing. We need to think about those. We were pamphleteers. You know, Ida B. Wells was a newspaper woman. We were reading our stuff in paper. We sometimes need to think about maybe deconstructing kind of our high technology thought process about the way we communicate and just start talking to each other. We have barbershops. Those are not illegal. We have beauty shops. Those are still legal. We have sororities and fraternities and links clubs and organizations that we attend. Those are still legal. They may try to take away our access to trusted voices in mainstream spaces, but that has never stopped us before. So the way I'm thinking about it is, what are all the many ways that we can communicate? This is one of them. Look at what Angela was talking about. Look at what was put together in such a short time. And I love that you say you all as if I had anything to do with it. Angela Rye.
You all, because it was a team effort.
Listen, if you have 2 babies, Angela baby is this, because she created this, and I was literally, you remember what you call it, Ponch and John, but John was the one in the side. I'm like the side friend, you know what I mean? I was riding with her.
That is not true.
In the big bike, and I'm in that little car.
I'm gonna let you get away with that.
That's a lie.
I'd be like, hey, I'm in here with it, because this was a labor of love. So I'm just saying, let's just get simple. We can communicate what's happening in Washington in straight up simple terms, wherever the hood can get it. Put it where your auntie can get it, where your uncle can get it, where your cousin can get it, that doesn't vote, doesn't care about politics. Pull them off the couch and say, hey, this is what's happening. Explain that to people. Don't wait to hear it on TV, because you may not.
Well, speaking of hearing things on TV, we have the lovely, illustrious, our sister friend, Carrie Champion, who is a journalist. She is a commentator. She is amazing. And we also are being joined by Queen Jotaka Eaddy, who is the founder of Win with Black Women. Now, I just got to say something, y'all. I just got to say, Reverend Mark might have kicked us off, okay? But let me tell you about Black woman power holding it down since Harriet Tubman, Sojourner, and Eve. Okay, we'll call her Lucy later on. But let me tell you. Okay, so I just want to shout out this Black girl magic happening right here. And I want to tell y'all welcome and thank you. It is not lost upon us that you all decided to stay up with us and make sure that we feed truth directly to the mouths and the minds of our people. So thank God for y'all. Hello, girls.
Hello. Let me first say, this is so amazing. Jotaka, I saw you all week. It feels like it.
Jotaka, what'd you just call her?
I'm sorry, Jotaka. It felt like a whole family. I'm tired. Angela,
it's midnight. I was gonna say we sleepy, but we here.
The ancestor said stay up. But go ahead.
You guys listen, I was in the bed and she was like, no, you're not. I was in the bed and I was like, let me wake up. Okay, I'm not in the bed. I saw you all this week except for Brittany, and I just want to say it's an honor to be here. Angela, you really are something special, and I'm only you don't like to receive attention and or praise, but we thank you for putting this together.
Amen.
And being resilient. With a group of
a lot of people.
We call this Angela Ryan friends, because when I tell you this lady,
guys,
473 black people.
It's not okay. There are people.
We can go down the list, but you know that
Mark
he stays on our head to make sure that we do this. And I don't know how y'all feel about it, but when you get a text, you're like, all right, I want to help because I know her heart. And so I'm thanking you and everybody who put this together. So just receive the compliment, okay? Amen. We're moving on. Joy, I love you. Thank you so much for being who you are and how you are. And we need joy. We got joy, all types of joy. I appreciate you being there for us and showing up for us. That breakup was sad, but necessary, because look what we can do now, right?
Look what we can do now. And can I just really quickly jump in and shout out Jotaka? Because let me just tell y'all something. There is probably maybe 2 people who can get Oprah Winfrey to move. Gail and Jotaka. It's about and maybe
that's sure there are pretty other people.
That is facts.
That is a true story.
It's true.
That's right. I have to add some more people to.
It's a few people. And Holly, we gotta shout out Holly, because I gotta
thank you.
I don't know how to make.
I don't know why Holly's not on here, but she knows how to get on here twice.
That's the Jedi, right?
She making sure we stay live, because the feds is out to get us,
y'all. The feds is gonna get you.
Yeah, Holly's out to get us for sure.
We're going to call Holly Holiday the tech support to Black America, because when I tell you, she knows how to make every kind of technological thing work, and I have no idea what she's talking about, but somehow it all works. Holly, please.
Joy, I told you I was calling them our elemental P's. Because they were throwing out letters to me, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, elemental P's, but I'm here. I'm going to do what I need to do. But Holly Holiday, if you don't get on here, I want everybody to know Elon Musk better watch out, because Holly Holiday coming.
This Holly Holiday power right here. Look at this. This Black women power right here tonight. Ooh,
I love it.
Jedi mind you're getting that. Holly, thank you so much for this. I love you for the studio chat. Really quickly, did we talk about NAACP getting honoring Jotaka and how
yes.
Let's
do that. Yeah, let's do that. Jotaka, tell everybody about the award you got. And for people who don't know, because everybody who's watching does not know about the power of Win with Black Women.
Yes.
Talk about how that came to be while Holly Holiday is coming out of the clouds, because she is an angel on earth. Talk about this.
She is that. And where did Holly go?
This she working.
So first of all, this is amazing. And Angela, you deserve every last one of those flowers that's behind your head.
Yes.
And the entire team and everybody who's come together to make this happen. And yes, I was super excited and honored to receive the NAACP's Social Impact Award. But this year it was super special, because this year they renamed the honor the Mildred Bond Roxborough Social Impact Award. And so for me, it was just extra special. A lot of people, they know me from different spaces. So some people know me from Silicon Valley. So they know me from my business. Some people know me. A lot of people know me from Win with Black Women. And I think a good number know me from the NAACP, but I was 7 years a member of the staff of the NAACP. I was senior advisor to the president and CEO. I led all the voting rights work, all the international work at the United Nations. And I had an opportunity to work very closely with Dr. Mildred Bond Roxborough, who's also my soror. And so she is the oldest living employee of the NAACP. She's 98 years old and she still works at the NAACP.
Wow.
So if you can imagine the history that she is. So I love our senior saints and our wise elders. So I've always found myself going to sit at their feet, whether it's Dr. Janetta Besh Cole, who I always say, find your inner Dr. Janetta Besh Cole when you feel yourself kind of moving, in a different direction. It's like, find that. And the late, great Dr. Hazelyn Dukes, whom we just lost, who was very much like a godmother to me. And like Dr. Dukes, Miss Roxborough, she taught us all a lot. And you could sit there and you knew that she was a woman so representative of women that have been in this movement. Quiet, may never have known her name, but she was behind so much in the NAACP. And so to receive the award when it was renamed for someone who I looked up to, who I knew, who was a soror, and who was a woman who a lot of people didn't know her name. And so now that honor carries her name, it meant a lot personally to me. It was beautiful to see so many other honorees, throughout the weekend, and to see Black culture and Black stories celebrated, particularly in a time when there's an intentionality around the erasure of Black culture and Black people, and the importance for us to celebrate our own selves, our own awards. And hats off to you, Angela, Native Land Pod with the Image Award, to you, Joy, and 2 Image Awards, and all of the nominations. And I'm always filled. I think I'm on like my 5th year at the Image Awards, and to go from being a staffer that was like, carrying stuff around to receiving an award was just surreal, and it was an honor of a lifetime.
That's awesome.
You deserve it. You deserve it. It's been deserved. Thank you so much for that, because the speech was beautiful and it was special, and you could feel it in the room. Yeah. I mean, everyone really, truly felt as if they owed you something, or they knew you, or they felt like we wanted to be around you. And I was one of them. And I was reporting back to the girl group, my machete, shout out to my machetes. I do want to say this, because earlier, Joy, you said something, and I want to talk about that for a minute. The idea of making sure that we make it simple and plain. And what we're doing right now is giving it to the people and making it simple and plain. That to me has been the key in terms of getting rid of all this misinformation. To me, that has been so difficult to tell people what's right or wrong. I know you guys hear the same things that I hear. I know you all hear people tell, you're like, that's just not true. And my hope with what we're doing is that we do bring facts, but how can we cut through? Like, what do we do? Do we keep doing this? What other aspects, Joy, do you think that we can provide so that people can have that information?
Well, I want to turn that back to you for a minute, because Carrie, I love what you do and the way that you break things down, but you also represent one of the things that is the most at risk in this moment, right? That is women's access. When I was growing up, I was a sporty shorty, but the idea of women being able to be even in a locker room interviewing people at the NFL or the NBA, it was just unheard of when I was growing up in the 80s. It was just not a thing that was happening. And so the very few Black women, especially women, period, but Black women who are able to break through, you represent one of that small number of people. And you're starting to see that roll back. This idea that DEI is a bad thing, that there should not be Black women and women, period, in these spaces. But also to the point that you asked about, Carrie, I would love for you to expound upon this. One of the ways they catch us is they get something that might make people a little uncomfortable, but they aren't personally familiar with it, and then they milk it. And they did that with this idea of women in sports being under threat because of trans people. Yeah. There are about 13 trans people in America. Okay, they're about 0.1% of the population. It's like you could fit them all probably in my office. It's just very few of them. Yeah. But there's this idea that is even gone into our communities that you've got to put your foot down and stand up against them as a threat to women in sports. And the real threat to women in sports is misogynistic men who don't respect WNBA players, et cetera, right? So for me, have you felt like that part of disinformation has sunk in among people you talk with? And what is the answer that's simple that can say that just isn't a thing?
Well, about 2.5 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago, there was this movement that trans men were getting into sports, and they were taking, in some form or fashion, they were taking away rights and places on teams for women. And I think it started during the Olympics. There was a one, and I don't want to use her name because it's not even necessary to use her name, but in Olympics, there was this track star who had more testosterone than estrogen. And there was always these comments around her sexuality. And that was a low buzz on the dark net, and people were talking about it, and it started to build, and it started to have momentum. There were a few television personalities who lived on the fringe of sports, who were trying to make a name for themselves. And they grabbed onto this one key issue because it began to outrage people, and they saw that it got more attention, it became more viral, it became a hot topic to talk about, with talking points that were easy to say, this is a threat. They are yet again, this is something they are taking away. So if I got a call from a friend who said in real time, she was talking to some moms, and she was saying, I was with these moms and they were telling me these things are real threats. How do we take care of it? This is an issue. We're going to take this to our school board. We're so upset. Now, none of these things are real issues. There are, as you pointed out, 500,000 athletes, I'll take from the collegiate level, NCAA, 500,000 athletes on the collegiate level. Of those 500,000, maybe 10 were trans or attempted to be in play in that role. 10, maybe 10 across all the universities, all the schools, all the colleges, maybe 10. And I'm approximating because I know it could be, like you said, maybe 10 or 13, but it wasn't a real issue. But for those who were conservative, it became such a talking point that for some reason, they got lumped in with a lot of people that were LGBT, right? These lesbian and these gays, not trans, but lesbian and gays, who were saying, what are we doing? Are they trying to be trans? It were all of these different conversations we were having, and no one was cutting through the nonsense. And as a result, you mentioned the WNBA, they found themselves being attacked. They found themselves being targeted when it just wasn't an issue for them. And now what we have to learn is that we have to say that that's not a real issue. I found out that no one was even speaking on behalf of trans people or saying this isn't a real issue in these schools. I felt like, and if I'm being honest with you, the WNBA in particular, because so many people started to pay attention to them, were afraid to find their voice. They didn't know. They didn't want to turn away the new attention that they had found, the money that they were receiving. So they weren't feeling very comfortable in talking about these issues. And if there was any real threat, the threat is that these women weren't allowed just to play sports as women. To your point, misogynistic. They were told that they had to be a certain way, act a certain way. And we saw it clear as day with an Angel Reese and a Caitlin Clark. Angel Reese couldn't do anything, and she was getting called these names, and there was all this cosplay talking about what she was and her sexual identity, and if she was too sexy, while Caitlin Clark remained an angel. And so if we live in this space and we start talking about what we can do, it is to tell someone in real time, this isn't even an issue. It shouldn't even be a concern. It's not even on anyone's list of issues in college. That's the thing that I'm talking about. Coaches aren't concerned about this. There is no real issue. And so the only way that we can continue to try to fight that type of idea that trans are taking over in college sports is by saying, let's talk the numbers. And I told you what the numbers were. They don't even match up. It's a difficult place to be in right now because people want to believe what they want to believe. We can say all day, here are the stats, but they are going to believe what they want to in that particular instance. And so we have to keep trying to use these platforms to change the way people feel, to give them education, to give them talking points, all the different things that we've been trying to do in our own rights. But it's hard to do now, as you all know.
You know what I think is so important that you bring up, Carrie? Even beyond the numbers, is that we understand what game people are trying to play with us, right? Because in my book, I don't care where you went to school, how many degrees you do or don't have, what language you speak. I don't care what media you consume. Nobody likes getting played. And so if we can be clear with people about how they're getting played, then we can protect ourselves. Here's what I mean by that. Any type of oppression, whether it's authoritarianism, fascism, good old-fashioned racism, sexism, etc., all of it relies on creating an enemy, creating somebody who's a scapegoat for all of our problems. If it's not trans people, it's immigrants. If it's not immigrants, it's Black folks. If it's not Black folks, it's specifically Black women. If it's not Black women, it's disabled people. The people in power have to decide that there is somebody to attack. And in order for the people in power to get the rest of us on their side, they have to point to that person that they're attacking and say, they're a threat to you too. Trans women are not a threat to me, right? Our trans siblings are not a threat to any of us, whether it's on the sports field, in a restroom, or, in school. It's just not true, right? So even beyond the numbers, there's a recognition that we have to say, you trying to play me right now.
Mm-hmm.
You are trying to convince me that somebody is my enemy who's not my enemy. And guess what? You're doing it to trans people today, but you did it to Black women yesterday, and you're going to do it to Black women tomorrow. So I'm going to be smart enough not to fall for the bull and recognize when you're just trying to point me in a direction that doesn't benefit me, but only benefits you.
I want to just jump in here because Jotaka promised me she only had 15 minutes for me. And so she said, I'm already in the tub. I was like, great. It'll be
wash up. I was going to say, Carrie was in the bed. I was in the tub. Get out the tub.
I love you guys. But I want to say this because, again, we talked about Black women pulling things together. And Jotaka, you have such a marvelous blueprint that all of a sudden now we got to win with Black men too. And we're not mad at it. We're happy about it. But can you please talk about why win with Black women? Why in this era that is so important? And before you answer that, I just got to say there's one more Black woman that we winning with today. This production would not have happened without Ashley Allison. And I want to give her kudos. That girl is a beast. She sleep right now, but we're going to make sure she gets loved on. When I tell y'all, I would tell you like, oh, this feels good. Give me. I am not taking, when I tell you Rachel Norlinger on press, Stephanie Young on strategy, comms, Sierra Johnson on digital media kits. I mean, Avani and Chloe, like we are winning with Black women, and the men came through too. Okay.
Yes,
Jaime-Harrison came through for interviews, a panel. We got AGs coming through.
Yeah.
But Jotaka,
can I just say real quick before Jotaka picks up, I can testify that Ashley was on about business because we were on the same flight yesterday coming back from California. She was sitting in front of us. And when I tell you, she had the largest laptop I've ever seen in my entire life. And this lady did not eat. She didn't get no food. She was working. I could see I was sitting behind her like a caddy corner in the 6th row. She was in the 5th row. And when I tell you that sister was working on this, you could see it on her enormous laptop. That lady worked from top to bottom. She was working.
Thank God for a privacy screen, though.
Yeah, she did need a privacy screen. But Joe, tell us about it.
She's lucky it was me back there because it would have been like a whole op if it hadn't been me.
Fans is watching. But Joe, talking to us about winning with Black women.
What you're saying is the real foundation of win with Black women. Like win with Black women, I often call it a collective love letter to Black women from ourselves. And it's so important for us in this moment, particularly to understand our collective power, that we all as individual Black women, we carry power in everything that we do in our day-to-day lives, in our professional lives, in our personal lives. But when we come together, we are a force multiplier. And that is, I believe, what is the secret sauce of win with Black women is really our ability to come together, but our love for each other and our love for our community.
Amen.
Yeah. So it's deeply, it starts there. It starts with sisterhood. It starts with love and grace, and our ability to recognize that we all have a position to play. I said this past weekend at the NAACP Image Awards. I asked the question because I think we've all at some point fantasized about what we would have done had we been born in the height of the civil rights movement. And I know, Joy, and you write about that when you talk about our beloved Megger and Merle Evers Williams. But we all think about I would have done this, I would have done that, or I would have done this. And I think the time for us we have to stop fantasizing about what we would have done and realize like Dr. Coretta Scott King reminded us that freedom is won and lost in every generation. And we are facing our civil rights movement right now. And it is up for us to figure out what role will we play? What role will you play? What will you do? Who are you? And what are you willing to do in this moment? And we cannot and should not, we should not shrink in this moment. And I think that the notion that we all, particularly Black women, historically, when you look at every single movement that we have had in this country, Black women have played a pivotal role, whether or not it was Sojourner Truth or Harriet Tubman leading us out of freedom, Sojourner Truth in the womanist movement, and really begging the question around Black women, even in our place in the women's suffrage. And then you look at just other historical figures, whether it's Ida B. Wells and the role that we played to help shape various aspects of the movement. I think now today, what we see in Win with Black Women and beyond at other Black women-centered and Black women-led organizations are Black women stepping to the plate, whether or not we're doing it in culture, whether or not we're in media and Black voices that are truth tellers, or whether or not we are on the movement, fighting and leading resistance, or whether or not we're in spaces redefining what it is to visualize and see what Blackness is. So when you see a Sid Marshall, who is the CEO of a NBA team, it redefines what a Black woman, our power and our essence. And that's what Win with Black Women is all about. It is about first speaking out against racism and sexism against Black women, additionally working to elect Black women up and down the ballot into office, because our representation matters, but also this third part of lifting up the collective power image of Black women in this country, and particularly that of Black women-led and centered organizations. And we've done it in a way that has centered love and sisterhood, recognizing that we all have power. And when that power comes together, it's unstoppable.
Amen.
Well, we're gonna I'll offer some parting words. Joy, you're gonna go last because you are the closer. So I'm gonna go to Bishop Britt first so I can keep time, because Bishop started preaching, boy. That's it. So we
might catch the spirit. Look, let me go ahead and get ready. Go ahead.
Let me go first. I'm gonna pass it to Britt because I'm gonna go first and then I'm gonna pass it to Britt. Shout out to Britt. First of all, really, thank you for letting me do this, because I was like, I'm in the bed, I can't do it now. I don't want to get off the phone. So Angela gonna have to talk to me for 4 more hours. Brittany, you said something I think that is important too. When they can find an enemy, first thing is when they can find an enemy, it's easy to change the language and make everybody feel like they need to be them versus us. And I appreciate you for saying that, separate but equal in so many different ways. The second thing is that when Jotaka, you just said, why can't we all, or what should we be doing in this fight? We all had remembered what we all fantasize about what we would have been doing in the civil rights movement. I would have been this, I would have been that. I had Britt on my podcast and she said, the blueprint is already there, and everyone fighting and everyone being involved doesn't always have to look the same way. Right. I could be, if in theory, I could be a cook and I could be providing food for people who are protesting. Mm-hmm. It could be that simple. For people at home who feel like they can't speak out or they can't be in front of the camera or forward facing, there are so many ways that you can get involved to help. And Britt, I thank you for reminding me of that. And I just want to let everyone know, no role is too small. No thing is too simple. Whatever you are doing at home that's helping, whether that's $5 to $5 million, it matters. Don't make yourself feel as if you have to do what we are doing. Do not simplify your existence, because it is important. And Britt, I thank you for reminding me of that, because I keep telling people, you got to be on TV to talk about making sure we're doing it right. You ain't got to be out there on the front lines in every single aspect. You could be cooking. You could be building websites. You could be doing so many things to help the movement. It just looks different, but the blueprint is there. I'll give
Amen. Amen.
That's so powerful. We all have a position to play. We all have a position to play.
Well, since you started, Joe, you start, and then we go to Britt, and then I'll go and Joyce.
I'm just gonna sum it up with wise words that came from my elder grandmother. And she says, when someone shows you who you are, believe them. Mm-hmm. And I think in this moment and in time right now, that we need to believe what those that are in the White House have told us over and over again.
That's right.
That what they're about. And let's not try to make it anything else. And I think that's why what we're doing, the state of the people is so important, to understand that our voices matter, and that we have power. And that's the most important thing, that understand that we have real power, and we can never let anyone lead us to believe that we do not have power, because, you know, I mean, 514,000 people turned their television off on a certain network. And that's power. That's power. And so within 24 hours. And so that is a signal, I believe, that people in this country are ready to act. And I think when we do have these milestones, it's important to lift them up and celebrate them.
I love that. Britt.
It's so right, Jotaka, when you say that when people who show you who they are believe them. We know who they are. Let's be very clear about it. And let's make sure we always know who we are.
Exactly.
Right? Because at the end of the day, and my friend Brittany Cooper says this, and Coop and myself and our friend Dr. David Johns will be on this stream at 4:00 Eastern, continuing this conversation. But she said on an Undistracted podcast episode, you know, I refuse to be impressed by them. Right. I mean, we want to say, well, they're organized and they got this going and they got that going, and their evil is so organized. It is. And we are descendant of those who survived.
Amen.
I know what I'm made of. I know who I come from. We were talking earlier about emancipation. I have 2 ancestors that fought and died in the U.S. colored troops. It was their pension that helped my family to survive, right? That's the blood running through my veins. So I don't care how clever they think they are. I don't care how smart they think they are. I don't care how evil they are. I don't care how creative they think they are. I don't care how cool they think they are running around in them goofy clothes and in shirts. I don't care. Because I know who I am, right? I know who y'all are. Every single person watching this is a person who has decided simply by joining up, whether you're on camera or you're streaming from off camera, or you are behind the scenes making this thing happen. All of us decided to know who we are and to act like it. And that's what we have to be about for the next however long. So yeah, we know who they are, but I know who I am, and I know who y'all are, and we don't lose.
Amen.
Thank you,
right.
Britt.
Do not lose.
I am I'm just going to tap in here to say that this is the way the marathon needed to start. It is a marathon. It is not a sprint. We are just getting started. Stateofthepeople.media is just beginning this 24-hour stretch, but there's so much more to come. The one thing that I hope that you all will learn from us is there is something that all of us can do. I pray that you will lead. I pray that you will learn. I pray that you will love. I have been taught in this group within such a short time frame that we get so much further when we love on one another. We accept each other for where we are, for who we are, for what we are. Now we can go forward. And that is what this moment requires of each of us, to accept and to move forward. There is way too much that we agree on to let little petty dissension and division divide us. So I ask that you all will first lead by ensuring that your folks are registered to watch stateofthepeople.media. Make sure you spread the word. We want to make sure that all of our people are informed, not with misinfo that they'll hear all night tomorrow, but with real info. We're not even watching that thing. We're going to inform you right here for 24 hours, running right through the State of the Union, or what is called the Joint Address tomorrow. And then I also want to kick it off to my girl, Joy Reid, who is the People's Champ. When I tell y'all you cannot mess with Joy, when I tell you we need Joy, when I tell you When Will Black Women got a t-shirt to prove it, Joy, we need you. And that's why you'll close us out before we turn it over to the 1 a.m. panel.
All right, I'm going to be mindful of time, but I want you all to look at this screen right now. Those of you who are live streaming, wherever you're live streaming it, I love these women so much. But the love I have for the people that you're seeing on this screen extends out to everyone who has been a part of State of the People. Because when I tell you we love people that we don't even necessarily know in person, that we've never met, and we came together because we love this community. We love our people, and we want to make sure that the people are safe. And I'm gonna end with a very simple saying. It's an old, actually Greek saying, and it is that you can say that you don't care about politics, but unfortunately, politics cares about you. I know a lot of y'all say, I don't care about that. I don't follow politics. A lot of Black folks say this to me all the time. I don't follow politics. Politics follows you. Politics is whether your kids can get Head Start. Politics is whether the police can kill you and get away with it and not be prosecuted. Politics is whether you can get a student loan. Politics is whether you can get a mortgage, whether you can be discriminated against to move into the neighborhood you want when you have the money, whether you can get a job, whether you can get a job without discrimination, whether there is a government, a federal government that will come to your rescue if you are harmed or discriminated against. Politics is literally the things in your life that you don't even realize happen through a vote. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all of the benefits. You think the STEMI is not politics? That came through politics. It was Congress that gave that to you. And so politics is going to impact you whether you want it to or not. So I'm begging you, asking you to pay attention, not to politics, but to the issues that people you trust, your trusted voices and messengers are trying to feed into you, because we're not doing it to make you care about politics. We're doing it because we care about you. I'm going to throw it back to the great Mark Thompson, our good brother, and with the thanks to all of my sisters. This has been an amazing kickoff. I could not think of a better kickoff with this incredible panel. But, you know, it's a girl power panel, but we're going to let the brother come back on in and talk. We're going to let him in the room.
I am unworthy coming in behind y'all.
Can I say one thing really quickly? And I it's so important. Folks often talk about that historic win with Black Women Call, but we had 44,000 on the Zoom. And then there was another. I always have to say there were 50,000 people who couldn't get on the Zoom that found themselves someplace else. There was 30,000 people in the clubhouse. But on the very next day, like the 200 groups that came afterwards and all the momentum, the $20 million that was raised, it would not have been possible. That momentum, that shift would not have happened. Yes, we did something great. But if the brothers had not come the very next day with 55,000,
yes,
I do not believe, I believe, yes, we would have still been historic. It would have been felt great. I do not feel that the rest of the groups would have had the courage and the conviction to organize as quickly as they did. So shout out to the brothers for always having the sisters back, because people often talk about the 44,000. Well, really it was like 90, but 44,000 on the Zoom, but the brothers came right next to 55,000. And that's what it's about. It's about our unity. It's about the Black family. It's about they try to divide us. They will continue to try to divide us, but we are more united than they ever know.
Now, Joe, you guys, just so you know, we over time, these lawyers might sue us for being in a panel. So, Mark, can we at least wave to them while you bring them in?
Well, but as I do that, let me just say to all of you warrior queens, I want to remind everyone of what the great Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, said, that we will judge the revolutionary awareness of any nation by the political maturity of its women, not of its men. So you all represent our political maturity, and we are thankful. Let me bring the Justice League in.
Yes.
Say hello real quick before we get ready to bounce and do the handoff. We've heard from our warrior queens to get us going.
Yes.
And I think Crump is somewhere in there.
There we go.
Oh, Lord,
we
staring at Ben stealing, child. Ben, you on live. What you doing, Ben?
What's up, Ben? Where's Ben? We need you in there.
Okay, Ben's representing me because there's always somebody to mess up the Zoom, and that's usually me. And that was Ben. I feel good. I'm not alone.
Ben just finished a town hall in Altadena.
Ben has a real job, see, and he was working.
I'm calling him anyway.
Elie and I are just talking about it. He tonight is actually still doing the thing. So
I'm stuck on your background though, Monique. I mean, like it's. I'm like, let me get my television.
Oh, I know. I want one more. That's cute.
No, because Angela is scary, y'all.
Yes.
You're not gonna tell that lie. I'm not scary. That's the ancestors scaring you. I'm not scary.
I gotta be ready. Whatever. The
Mark has
grandma,
not had
the
the
great
opportunity.
grandma in her spirit makes me know show up right or don't come at all.
I have
Mark is
experienced
just trying to
that.
introduce this panel that's already started talking. That's all Mark
I
is trying
have
to do.
experienced that just this week.
Mark, stop that. That is not true.
And-
Mark got loved on, and Mark put me in my place and told me what I did.
Angela Cole, which is the inner Dr. Janetta Besh Cole that lives inside of Angela. And I get that. I get Angela Cole all the time. So I'm gonna speak up for Angela Cole. For her inner Dr.
You
Janetta
guys,
Besh.
all Mark is trying to do is introduce this illustrious.
That's all he wants. He
That's
wants
all
to
he's
introduce
trying to
his
do.
panel so badly.
Let us go, Mark. So we claim your time, Mark.
Love y'all.
Claim your
Take
time.
care.
Bye.
Bye
Love
bye.
Love y'all.
Go
I'm
take
gonna
care.
talk about 5
Kari,
minutes.
Joy, Brittany.
Bye bye.
Thank you all. Angela, thank you all very, very much. Folks, we got the Justice League here with us, and we are going to bring them on. Ben Crump is on deck. He'll be joining us momentarily as soon as he can. But let me just properly introduce these Avengers here in this Justice League. I think that's a mixed metaphor, Elie, because the Avengers and Justice League are two different. One is DC and one is Marvel. But we can do what we want to do. We can do it all together. He is the Justice correspondent for The Nation magazine. Draw nigh and lend an ear, because he's got some important stuff to tell us about what's happening in the courts. And of course, well-known trial attorney, crisis manager, and host of her own show as well, the Dr. Monique Pressley. We are so glad to have you both here. And folks, again, stateofthepeople.media. Spread the word. Share this stream with your friends and family. Wake them up. You know, we can sleep when we're dead. We'll be with you for the next 23 hours now, 1 hour under our belt. Take it away, Elie and Monique.
Well, I want to introduce Elie again, because for all of the things that were just said, y'all don't know what we say behind Elie's back, but I said it to like 54 people tonight, and I was like, I don't have time to learn how to be a constitutional lawyer. Elie better be in my session, and it just brings me to such appreciation, is all I really want to say, for all of the various gifts and talents that we've just already seen on display tonight. And I know that I don't have to stretch you to get you to agree, Elie, but that first panel, man, was that amazing. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Jotaka. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Angela Rye, my birthday mate. She is much younger, but we share the same date for a birthday. And I just want to say, as much as I tease, Joyce Meyer always says this thing, and Angela, if you're watching, you can just be mad, but Joyce Meyer says, many are the called, but the chosen are few, which is Bible. But the line she adds is, and the chosen are the few who answer the call. And my experience of you, Angela Rye, is that when the call comes, you answer it. And then when you answer it, we all answer it because you answered it. And that is really what we are in tonight. So you're not on to tell me to shut up. I appreciate you as a sister and all of the sisterhood and brotherhood that have come and answered the call, because it was you calling and we trust you. What say you, Elie?
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank so much Angela and for everybody else for organizing this panel. I hope everybody who watched felt very uplifted by those beautiful Black women, because now we have to talk about reality. Now we have to talk
now we're gonna come crushing down
the cold, hard facts of our situation. For those who don't know me, I am Elie Mystal. I'm the Justice correspondent for The Nation. I've been writing and covering the law in the Supreme Court, the Justice Department, for about 15 years now. And I can tell you, based on that experience, that we are truly living in unprecedented times. Donald Trump is currently under 95 separate federal lawsuits stemming from his illegal and unconstitutional executive orders that he has issued in just the first 6 weeks of his presidency. That, the scientists would call, is a record. All right, that goes in the Guinness book of world records for most criminal activity by a president in 6 weeks. All right. So from
now,
that,
Elie, let me ask you, because you said 95, and some people are going to think that's a big number. Some people aren't going to think it's a big number. Mute Attorney Crump until we ask you a question. He started Mardi Gras already. Let me just say, happy Mardi Gras, y'all. It's Fat Tuesday. Let the good times roll. I'm letting it roll with my brothers in the law. But Elie, 95, how many of them are legitimate in your expert opinion?
Oh, almost all of them. I haven't read every single stitch of every one of the 95 complaints, but I've read a lot of them, and all of them are based on legitimate grounds. Some are closer to the line than others in terms of their legality and their likelihood of success, but all of them that I have read, and all of the important ones, focus on some specific legal or illegal or questionably legal activity that Trump has done. And again, it is an unprecedented number of lawsuits against Trump because Trump has taken an unprecedented amount of illegal or unconstitutional executive actions. So
okay, give us some for instances, because we're starting from ring, hello. And this is, and we're saying hello to citizens, to constituents, to voters, maybe some who thought that it was all the same and that a regime change wouldn't mean that much. And we don't have to necessarily be for one party or against, because we're going to see so much in this 24 hours that is nonpartisan. But we know when we getting stabbed in the back and kicked in the butt and slapped in the face all at the same time.
Yeah, Monique, look, I want people to understand something here. I obviously have a political point of view. I believe in justice and fairness and kindness and equality. And I understand that I live in a country where not everybody agrees with me. I understand that I live in a country where potentially most people disagree with me. And potentially most people want harm to come to those they dislike and those they hate. And I cannot change your mind here in an hour about your path down that road. What I can tell you is that even if you hate these people, even if you hate certain issues, even if you agree with Trump on some of his cruelty, surely we can all agree that there is a way that a president of the United States is supposed to enforce and apply the law. And so when we think through some of these lawsuits, the thing that I want people to remember is that even if you think that the policy is right, the way that he is going about it is either illegal or unconstitutional. So let's start with the biggie, birthright citizenship, right? Now, I know that there are a lot of people who are not me, who don't like immigrants, who don't like illegal immigrants, and I can do nothing to help your soul and fix you in this hour. But I think we can all agree that the 14th Amendment of the Constitution is a thing that actually happened in this country. There was, if you kind of remember your history books, we had like a war, and there was a winner and a loser of that war, and the victors wrote some new constitutional amendments, and one of them was the 14th Amendment. And the first thing the 14th Amendment did was establish citizenship for all of the former slaves. And they did this by inventing an entirely new thing in American history up to that point. The concept of a federal citizen, a citizen of the United States of America. Prior to the 14th Amendment, citizenship flowed up from the states. So you weren't a citizen of the United States, you were a citizen of New York or South Carolina or Georgia. And if you can imagine the former enslaved people, you didn't get to be a citizen of Georgia or South Carolina if you were an African, right? So the 14th Amendment said, you know what? We're not going to let Georgia decide who gets to be a citizen or not. We're not going to let South Carolina decide who gets to be a citizen or not. We're going to create a new thing called a federal American citizen, and we're going to make sure that that is protected in the Constitution. When Donald Trump says that he's taking away birthright citizenship, that is what he's taking away. So you might have an issue with so-called illegal immigrants. You might have an issue with out-of-status people. You might not like them. And again, I can't help you there. But surely you can understand that taking away the foundational basis of citizenship for all African Americans in this country might be a problem. And that is what his birthright citizenship executive order does. It tries to change the terms of the 14th Amendment via executive order without a constitutional amendment to change the 14th Amendment. And that is why he's being sued multiple times over that. And that is why I think even with this Supreme Court, he is most likely to lose those cases, because that executive order is facially and banally unconstitutional.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, Elie, because I think lots of times people think whatever it is that's happening is happening to somebody else, and it's not happening necessarily to us. But I'm going to bring Attorney Crump in because we don't want to just have dinner with you, Ben. We hungry too. We need you to come on in. And I know that you are working hard for us. I watched practically all of the town hall in Altadena today. So I think, Ben, if you could just start for us there, because is there even a civil rights division anymore in the Department of Justice? And do they intend to do anything at all to uphold our constitutional rights and privileges? And what are you seeing out there in the street?
Well, there's so many things that they have taken away from us that we quite frankly thought were fundamental. We literally believe, like Elie was just saying, that the 14th Amendment made birthright citizenship absolute. And I do agree. I think it's going to be struck down by the courts, his efforts on this latest action to have an executive order. But I will say this before I answer your question directly, Monique, and that is the fact that what he is doing is going to test the elasticity of the United States Constitution. And I am not so sure, unless we fight like hell, that it will ever regain its former dimensions. And that's what's at stake here. When we talk about the Department of Justice, and historically, when we think about the civil rights era with Dr. King and John Lewis, it was President Kendi and President Johnson turned into the Federal Department of Justice to come and make sure that the states did not trample on the constitutional rights of Black citizens, brown citizens, Native citizens, any citizen that was being marginalized. But now, when we think about how they've weaponized the Department of Justice, I don't know, as I sit here today on March 3rd, 2025, if we have a civil rights division in the Department of Justice. You cannot say that
Elie,
with a straight
Ben,
face.
Elie knows, and I know, and we don't. And listen, I would really like for you to, because I was in so many of these meetings with you, and I just want to thank you. I want to tell everybody who's watching, I'm on the screen with some of my own kind of giants and personal heroes in different lanes. And Ben, when we were trying to get the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed, we were on Capitol Hill with the Floyd family, with the Garner family, we with the Brown family, and promises were made and promises were not kept. And I'm not going to go by the wayside today, but what I want to say is, even after all that happened, in the last administration, we had a real champion in Kristen Clark, and we had one of the most successful, progressive, forward-moving civil rights divisions of the Department of Justice ever. And I think we all were there to wish her well at the end of December, early January, whenever it was. The depression has kicked it out of my mind. But can you talk to us about kind of the difference in what a vote does, Ben, because we had one of the most active and successful civil rights divisions ever, and now we're seeing the pulling back and tearing down of everything that they tried to do.
Absolutely. And elections have consequences. And we have to remind people of that over and over and over again. But just like you, Monique, Kristen Clark was a real champion for justice. She was a force of nature. Elie, under this Biden-Harris administration and Kristen Clark fighting with the leverage she had been granted by Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, she went and did something I have never seen done in my whole career. She was prosecuting police officers for killing black people. We didn't even have that during the Obama administration. And not only was she prosecuting them, she was getting convictions. Something else, Monique, we would never get. Even if they did a prosecution, it was such a laissez-faire attempt that they just got away with it. And they say, oh, well, we tried, but not Kristen Clark, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, the plea she got out of that there, Tyree Nichols, the conviction she got out of that. I mean, she was extraordinary in making black people believe that we could get equal justice under the law. And so now I am just shocked and heartbroken. All the strides we made, they are starting to pull them back. Like, even though we didn't get the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed, we got intermittent progress with such things as the DOJ keeping a database that said we get to track these bad cops, these cops that had engaged in excessive force, that had brutalized our people, who had lied on police records like they did with Breonna Taylor. We had a database of that. And what's the first thing they do, Elie? They go and they take down the database. So now we're having to start from scratch and say, well, this officer that just recently killed this next black hashtag, did they have a history? Did they have a previous complaints and so forth? And so I remind everybody, elections have real consequences. And I'm so troubled. I'm so troubled as I talk to two people who I know are brilliant and courageous, which is an important conversation. We have a lot of brilliant people, but they lack the courage to stand up and speak truth to power. And if we're speaking truth, a lot of people who, for whatever reason in our community, did not support the Vice President Harris ticket, man, these private prisons that the stock prices going up, who do you think they have intended to fill those prisons? It's going to be poor people of color first. And then, as our sister Michelle Alexander said, if they can't fill them up with enough black and brown people, then they'll go after the poor white people. But do believe they're going to start criminalizing us in ways we have never seen before, because they want these private prisons to be filled. And so we have work to do, brothers and sisters.
Well, Ben, don't leave us. I got two questions for Elie, and then I want to come back to you. But I gotta shout out my sister, Reecie with the receipts, Reecie Colbert, because when you started talking, Ben, about this prison pipeline and what they're doing in the privatization of the correctional system, and they mean for us to be the labor. Don't get it twisted. This immigration game that they're running, this thing that they're doing, they're going to collect all the brown and then they're going to move to the black, and it's all about a workforce. That's why this Guantanamo Bay lawsuit is so important. But my two questions for you, Elie, because I'm concerned, and you answer all my questions when I'm concerned. Elie, I'm concerned first about the fact that we can have a Kristen Clark, a person who's appointed, qualified, capable, justice seeking, all the things, and a black woman, not gonna skip that, but a singular person who can so importantly turn the tide of justice forward that we see all kinds of things happen that have never happened before. And then out goes Merrick, out goes Kristen, in comes Bondi, same as before with Jeff Sessions. God, I never thought I'd say his name again. And with a single person, not an entire administration or apparatus, but with a single person, we end up like turning back the hands of time to the jeopardy of our people. My question for you is, one, is that what really was intended? Go to our founders if you want to, go to the Constitution if you want to, wherever you think we should go with it. But is that what was intended by the law? Or is that a flaw in the system where the law itself is not holding up because it depends on a particular person to make sure that it happens? And then second, please comment on the part that Attorney Crump was just talking about, where we're seeing the erosion of our rights under this current administration.
Yeah, so the law is only as good as the people enforcing it. That's always been true. Was it a flaw in the original Constitution? Absolutely. The Constitution was written by slaveholders. The Constitution was written for the express purpose of erecting a Western slave empire. It's not a surprise they didn't have a concept of civil rights at the founding of the country. The head of the Civil Rights Division in the Department of Justice is always, and I've written this for Michael Harriot's Contraband Camp on Substack, the head of the Civil Rights Division is literally always the most important attorney for Black Americans in this country, whether or not that person is good or bad. If you get a good civil rights head, you're better off. If you get a bad one, you're worse off. But that person is always the most important. And as Attorney Crump said very eloquently, Kristen Clark was a great one. But let's look at Project 2025, because like so much of what's going on in the current administration, they wrote it down. So before the election, anybody who was paying attention had the opportunity to read exactly what they were going to do with the Civil Rights Division. And their plan, as written in Project 2025, was to gut it, was to prevent it from taking legal action. They literally said, and Pam Bondi is carrying this out, that all actions from the Civil Rights Division have to go through the Attorney General, and that the civil rights head has no independent authority. So we've gone from Kristen Clark to a woman named Harmeet Dillon, who, and I've researched her history, has absolutely no experience in civil rights, has absolutely no litigation experience. I was
about to say, she hasn't tried a single case.
She was a person who ran unsuccessfully to run the RNC and got beat by Ronna McDaniel. Do you know how much of a loser you need to be to get beat by Ronna McDaniel? All right, that's who the current head of the Civil Rights Division is, a person with absolutely no experience. But when you put a person with no experience and no desire and no will in that position, what you do is have critically lack of enforcement of civil rights throughout the country, right? So I know there are a lot of people who were watching the stream who were underwhelmed by the Biden's administration's response to George Floyd and his ability to do anything to stop killer and brutal cops from terrorizing and harassing us. I was underwhelmed. I wrote a lot about how underwhelmed I was with the Biden administration. But you know what's worse than that? The Trump administration and Bondi and Harmeet Dillon. Because the key difference here is that any individual attorney, Ben Crump, you name it, can go after a single cop, can try to bring a single brutal cop to justice. Sometimes they win. Sometimes Derek Chauvin spends the rest of his short ass life in jail. Sometimes they lose, but any single attorney can bring down a cop. Only the Department of Justice and the Civil Rights Division can bring down a police department. And that is what good civil rights attorneys do. That's what Kristen Clark was doing. It's called a pattern and practice investigation, where you go after not one bad cop, not one bad apple, but the whole bunch. Because let's always remember, the phrase is not one bad apple. Oh, forget about it. Just eat the rest of the good apples. What are you bitching about? No. The phrase is one bad apple spoils the bunch. And Kristen Clark was able to go after the bunch, as in entire police departments, for their, quote, pattern and practice of racial terrorizations. That's what she did in Kentucky after the Breonna Taylor murder, right? But now, since the Civil Rights Division cannot act, there are not going to be any pattern and practice investigations. So there's going to be nothing to bring terrible police departments to heel. That is the new policy that a majority of Americans voted for, to make sure that cops never have to answer for their crimes as a department, as an institution, right? That's a key in taking away the power of the Civil Rights Division. The other kind of huge thing, and Crump mentioned this, when they take away the data, understand how much of a long-term problem that is. That means any future investigation has to start from scratch. We don't get to know the patterns and the practices and the histories of these police departments because they've deleted the data. And even if even if somebody like copied it on a flash file, now you're going to have to go to court and prove what's called provenance, prove that that data was secured for the entire time when it was out of government hands. That's going to be very hard to do. So not only are you not going to have individual data for individual killer cops, you're not going to have data for the whole police department. But there's an even bigger problem. Who's tracking it now? Who's telling us?
No,
right?
But they were never doing. Ben is going to start laughing because this is where we have gone round and round. I can't think of a single case in maybe the past 10 years where there's been one officer to do something and I haven't said to Ben, oh, okay, whose idea was that? So I agree with you 100% because I have always said I come to it differently. I come to it as someone who was senior litigation for a municipality, for an attorney general's office. So when I'm saying I understand the underbelly, I'm like, no, fools, I understand the underbelly. And what I'm trying to say to you is there's always an assistant chief in the line. There's always a lieutenant in the line. People always know. Nobody oops and uh-ohs into that one bad night. You can tell when that happens. Like the circumstances are very plain. The facts are easy to find out, but these circumstances that we've been seeing over and over, there's, as you said, there's rot at the root. And what the Justice and Policing Act would have done, shout out to the Floyd family for everything that they continue still to do, because we're talking about civil rights and police cases right now. What the Justice and Policing Act would have done, hello, Queen, would have been to make sure we do not have cases where there's no data, cases where there's no collection, cases where nothing is happening. And that all hope of that is gone. And it is now up to us. So I'm hoping, Attorney Crump, you can tell us if it's up to local police departments, if it's up to local activists, what can we do in order to keep the records that the federal government is not going to? Unless, Queen, you're in here because you want to tell us something else.
I am going to tell my brother Ben because I love him so much. And since the people are watching you, thousands of people who admire you, we can see everything you eating. They are not putting you backstage, and I want to make sure you know. I know you are starving from all your work and all the dinner, but I want to make sure I tell you they can see everything, and they have called me and texted, and they're frantic. They're like, "Ben hungry. He's eating." So I just want to make sure you know that we can see you. We love you. We can see you. That's all I wanted. Go back and talk about serious things. But Ben, we need you to know we can see you. I love you.
You can stay and talk to us about the serious things too. Also, though.
All I'll say is this: just have them pray my strength, because know that I've been working with our people in Altadena all day, because we cannot let them take that generational wealth from this Black community, and that's a whole nother subject. But to answer Monique's question, and I have to go back to what Elie was saying, because y'all, it is so profound These aren't things that are happening in abstract when they get rid of the database. I mean, a prima facie case is Sonia Massey.
Yeah.
Sonia Massey. I mean, the cop who shot her in her face when she said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," had been to 6 police departments within 3 years. And so now, under the current administration, there wouldn't be any documentation of his pattern and practice of excessive force and brutality. So therefore, y'all, these things are real. Elections have consequences. And the people who are most affected by people not voting is our community. I mean, in a extreme way, in an extreme way. So I had to say that to amen, my brother Elie, on that matter about the lack of those databases is going to be critically hurtful to our efforts to try to bring killer cops to justice. Now,
Yeah, but I think then though I think then we have to say though that people can do Freedom of Information Act, and it's
yeah, I
going
was
to take
going there.
that. Okay, go ahead.
I was going there, and you know, Monique is quicker than most of us. She was already jumping ahead, but you know, we have to revert back to what we did before we had the database. Is it more daunting? Yes, it is, but not impossible. I mean, we got convictions even before they had the database, and we had to file Freedom of Information Act, which is a part of my arsenal. I'm very strategic when we do it. You know, Monique, we've done it before because then you're fighting in the court of public opinion that will have an influence on the court of law. And the one thing I always say, Elie, when we have to file those Freedom of Information Acts, I say 2 things. I said, well, if the police did nothing wrong, why wouldn't they want to show the world the video so everybody can quit saying, oh, that race baiting Crump, that agitator Crump, he just making up stuff. I say, shut me up. Show the video. It'll be clear. It'll exonerate the officer and the whole 9. And we say that. And then the second thing I always say about videos. Y'all, America is so hypocritical on so many levels. And I've argued in federal courts on numerous occasions on this point. Angela Rice, I ain't eating my food no more. I'm just going to fight on sheer will, even though I'm starving. The reality is this, Monique, it's a double standard because they say they don't want to show the video because there's a pending investigation and they don't want to taint the investigation and so forth. However, let them have a video of a young brother or sister doing something nefarious. That video will be all over the 6 o'clock news that day. But yet, when it's the police doing something nefarious or violating the policy, they make us wait 6 months, a year, 2 years. They try to do this delay where nobody even remembers the dead, innocent black person who was shot in the back, saved their family. And that's why we have to be very strategic and we have to be very consistent with filing these Freedom of Information Acts and then sharing the information on the databases, making sure we communicate. Well, we used to have it with the Washington Post. I don't know if they're going to do that anymore, but they used to help us with keeping the database. We'll probably have to turn to the Guardian, turn to our black newspapers with the National Newspaper Association. But where there is a will, there is a way. With this social media, Monique, these young, brilliant brothers and sisters, we can find a way to document every state where they have a police killing. Everything we see on social media hashtag, I implore somebody has to start keeping a list. And that list has to be updated on a daily basis because I'm so sad of this reality.
Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells documented lynchings when her life was under threat. Ain't nobody else was doing it. Ida B. Wells counted the lynchings, and that's what we have to do.
Exactly.
And Elie, it's not just police misconduct, right? Because I think people of good conscience can hear everything we've said thus far and think, that's terrible. That's so sad. I wish that wasn't happening. And not realize truly the depth of the obligation of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. So much so, I'm gonna switch it up for a second. I was talking to a group of women, and I was trying to express to them how important it was and how devastated I was by what was happening with the Civil Rights Division, looking at what seemed like my whole life's work just going down the toilet. And the response in the chat was, I understand that sexual harassment may be important, and I understand that fair pay may be important. And I was like, girl, I'm talking about folks getting shot in the damn street, and you think I'm talking about harassment cases? But it taught me the lesson, because people don't know that is also the Civil Rights Division's obligation to fight for fairness for women, to fight for fairness for people who have special education needs, to fight for fairness for everybody in any possible oppressed category. Can you maybe explain to us what the reaches are of that and the ramifications for where we are now?
Yeah, I want to actually take that a little bit bigger, Monique, because I feel like I hear exactly have those conversations a lot from white people and black people, and it comes different, depending on their socioeconomic situation or whatever. But you'll hear certain people, for me in my life, mainly white liberal people, be like, "Oh my God, that's so horrible." But what can we do? What can I do, right? And I'll hear predominantly from black folks, younger black folks especially, "Oh man, that's so terrible, but I ain't gonna do nothing. They ain't gonna do nothing." And so on both sides of that spectrum, there's a nihilism, right? There's a belief that nothing can change, will change, or has ever changed, right? And so one of the things that I tried a lot to do in my work, with my books or whatever, is to remind people that most of the bad things that are happening in this country are happening intentionally. And they're happening intentionally because of a law that was passed or a case that was decided that makes our world this way. And it doesn't have to be this way. If we elected better people, if we voted all of the time, if we did all the things all of the time, our world would be better, because the law is not objective. The law does not sit at a remove from the rest of us coming down on high. The law was not thrown down to us by Moses, all right? That's not how it happens in this country. The law is something that we as people vote for and write down, and many of the laws are terrible. And it is those terrible laws that put us in this situation, right? So like, think about just, my example here is a simple thing about police brutality. I think a lot of people have heard by this point that an officer is allowed to kill you if they are in fear of their life, right? And the legal standard is that the officer has to be in fear of their life. And how do you judge the fear? Based on what a reasonable officer would fear at the time. Folks, that is a dumb standard. And that is a dumb standard that was brought to us by one Supreme Court case, Graham v. Connor, which changed the standard into this stupid standard of feared for our life, right? Because a reasonable standard, a different standard, a fair standard, a not racist standard would be that the officer has to be objectively right. So if you shoot me because you think I have a gun and I don't, guess what? You go to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200 from your Truth Social Substack, you just go to jail because you're
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
wrong.
agree with you about that at all, Elie.
An objective
No.
standard would
That's
be
not an objective standard with a subjective jury. That doesn't make any sense. And
we do it all the time in tort cases. We do it all the time in tort cases.
Listen, but see, that's the difference, right? It makes sense. Ben is gonna stop eating and start fussing at me about this because he knows I feel 100% strongly. I've been in the company of too many young, poorly trained, or not so poorly trained, black, brown, blue, purple, but they're all blue. They run blue. Officers cowering in a corner